to my next game, Taxi Showdown, a chaotic arcade multiplayer game about driving taxis around a procedurally generated city while competing in different game modes. This has been an on and off project for a couple of years now, and I've decided to redo many of the mechanics in a more updated way, and so far everything works. Here's hoping Unity won't have a fit and break stuff though. Anyway, there's lots to talk about, as during the past few months I've been very busy with this project, and while the core gameplay and mechanics are basically complete, I'm far from finished with the game modes. As per usual, let's start with the art style. So for an obvious start, the game looks completely different to my last game, The Hotel, where everything in that game was more of a low poly feel. This game is populated with voxel models, created using the software Magic of Voxel, the same software used for Teardown. Unlike Teardown, I have no idea how to make a full voxel map, and I just resorted to the traditional method of exporting to polygonal models using OBJ files. The software is awesome to use, as it's technically sculpting software rather than a modeling software, as you tend to add voxels and carve them out, as well as painting them to give it colour. I won't go into all the details of this, as there are better videos out there that can explain it instead of myself, but for the super basics, I think I've gotten that covered. On top of this, most models have LODs to them, levels of detail. Only ones that don't have them at the moment are vehicles. I really like this art style, all the voxels and things, not only because it's simple, but I'm able to figure out how to add details to all the objects to make things pop out more. The lighting is pretty simple. It's mainly just two directional lights for the sun and moon, which I'll get to later. Other lights are real-time spotlights or point lights. These are placed on street lights, car headlights, indicator lights, etc. Other lighting is done through emissive maps and colours that affect the global illumination, such as building lights at night and the player arrow for some reason. It isn't supposed to glow, but I have a feeling it's something to do with the screen space global illumination. There's not much to add here about post-processing, as it's a lot more minimal compared to the last game. It's basically just tone mapping, bloom to make bright things glow slightly, a low amount of motion blur, physically generated sky and volumetric clouds, using a texture I made for a personal resource pack in Minecraft, as well as a few screen space effects like reflections and global illumination. There's also water, which is marked initially as a post-processing for it to work, but most of the stuff to make it work is actually in a game object with a water component. The day-night cycle is pretty simple. It's a float constantly increasing all the way to 360, where it resets back to 0 and repeats. I've made sure that the sun and moon directional lights will toggle depending on what time it is. Sun in the day, moon in the night, obviously. They will also increase and decrease in intensity depending on how far they've travelled by simply using a percentage towards its starting angle and ending angle. In turn, the intensity will use an inverse lerp using the percentage from earlier along an animation curve from its brightest intensity to 0. This way I have a smoother transition from sun to moon. I have also made sure that the streetlights and player headlights will turn on automatically when the time reaches sunset, and to turn them off when it's daytime. This way the lights stay on during sunset and sunrise to avoid being left in the dark. The main menu camera is just a simple pan in a circle. However, with the added twist of all the vehicles, weapons and effects being played in slow motion until they stop, I came up with this idea when I initially was creating the main menu. It was something fun to try and spice the main menu up a little bit. Plus, every time the scene resets, the angle is random. The map overview camera is just a simple overhead view. It overlooks most or all of the generated map, giving a quick preview before you start playing. I recently gave the camera a lot of wobble as if it's something flying overhead, and I'll eventually create a helicopter model that will be part of the overview camera. Currently it's a tree. This also will play after finishing the game when you view your score and rank. Player camera is a third-person camera that follows your car. Looking down pushes the camera higher, and looking up will pull the camera closer and slightly lower than the car. When no camera input is made within 10 seconds, it'll reset to facing in the direction of the vehicle's velocity. Depending on the velocity of the player depends on how much camera shake will occur. The explosions will increase this by a lot for a small amount of time. The camera shake will also happen when the player's in the air, so it's overall velocity rather than just grounded velocity. Lastly, there is a camera tilt when the player is grounded and turning. This will turn in a similar way to the car itself to try and give some type of inertia effect. The tilt is slow and doesn't cause motion sickness, while earlier it was a lot faster and it wasn't pleasant. The game focuses a lot on its multiplayer aspect, however a single player practice mode will be available later down the line. The game itself doesn't use servers, but uses a host and client connection, while using Unity Lobby and Unity Netcode and Relay to help players connect. You can either connect using a code mainly for private lobbies, or by using a quick join option with the ability to choose a game mode. Selecting a game mode will allow you to see how many lobbies are open with that specific game mode, sort of like a search function. Each lobby will hold up to 12 players. Public lobbies can be made by creating a name, making sure the public option is checked, and selecting a game mode, then clicking create. This lobby will be open to all who decide to quickly join a game, whether it's random or with a specific game mode. Public lobbies will not have a customizable game length and map size. Once a public game has been completed, all players will be taken to the menu. This might change to be very similar to private lobbies. Private lobbies have more customization, mainly the in-game time and map size. Players can select a few of the set game times, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10, 15, 20. But when a private game has been completed, the idea is to allow the players to keep playing over and over. This should be possible due to all the player data being transferred between all the players through the host and client connection. There may be a possibility that I'll add dedicated server support. I'm unsure on how to integrate it, but I'll give it a try. When a lobby has been created, the host cannot change any settings about it. There may be a possibility that I'll add dedicated server support. I'm unsure on how to integrate it, but I will give it a try sometime down the line. I aim to try and replicate something that TF2 did in its early years, where there was just a quick join option and you just join into either an official server or an unofficial server, this being just unofficial servers. When a lobby is created, the host cannot change any settings about it, so if the host players and possible dedicated servers create a lobby or session, they will have to restart the lobby if they want to change things. Replayability is a pretty easy thing for multiplayer games, but I'm hoping to make use of this through the multitude of game modes I'll end up providing to the player base. The other part of replayability should be the more casual competitive style of things. Should help bring people back to try and earn higher scores, things like that. The player can customize their vehicle in quite a few ways, either to completely change the vehicle itself or through cosmetics. To start, the player can change their name. Pretty easy, just helps distinguish players from one another. Next is the car stats. This changes the vehicle completely, and each vehicle has its own top speed, acceleration, deceleration, traction, and in-air control. I'm planning on creating more vehicles, some more taxi-like than others. Next is the car colours. Players can choose their primary or secondary car colours from a list of 45 different shades of colours. The primary colour will also change the lower gradient of the player's name, and as well as the player's pin on the minimap. Next will be the car hats. Currently they're all taxi themed, such as a small taxi sign, large taxi sign, or both of them together. There are plans to add more hats, some less taxi-like than others. Finally is the player character. This is the character designed to follow the player in certain game modes. They'll appear at objectives and go to buildings. You can choose their character model, though there's only a male option at the moment. Their skin colour out of 6 options, their clothes and hair colour, which use the same 45 colours from before. Each map is procedurally generated using the L system from Sunny Valley Studios, as I'm still slowly learning how procedural generation works. However, this has proven successful, as I'm able to generate roads and structures alongside them, with a random chance for a park to appear. I have built upon this, allowing the option for road type spawn chances to help add variety. The roofs are randomly chosen from a list with random rotations, as well as multiple street objects that help populate the roads. I have also designed my own structures through the use of presets. I created new parks, some uncrossable, however most have bridges or paths for vehicles to drive over. Parks are made to allow the player to easily drive out of the world generation to find a new quick route to score more points. The road types I created follow UK road types such as roundabouts, pedestrian crossings, box junctions, etc. Street objects consist of lights, traffic lights, crossings and signs. Upon lights being destroyed, they'll stop working, and if it's a light controller, then it'll cause any other connected lights to stop working also. All objects will reset their health and position when they're out of range of the player. Traffic lights and crossings have their own timers that will change their active state. For traffic lights, their active states follow UK traffic lights. Red to stop, red and yellow to get ready to go, green to go, and yellow on its own to get ready to stop, and then red again. If the state is in red and yellow or just yellow, the timer will go 3 times its usual speed of 15 seconds. I made it so one light in the group of lights will be the light controller or the dominant light. This will allow other lights to update either in a similar way or opposite way, depending on which light is in which list, being similar lights or opposite lights. Crossing lights work in a similar way as only one side needs to be active at one time. The player uses a rigid body to help it move, as car controls are not my thing and I prefer making specific controls for human characters. I had to look around for some help and I stumbled upon a simple tutorial on an arcade controller by Dev. Even though he explains that the controller taught isn't close to his Unity asset, it's still very helpful as I'm still able to add my own logic onto it. I even noticed that the player can make a really quick turn when they start accelerating, but it only happens for a second. To start on the things I added is player boosting. This allows the player to boost forward, upwards or sideways. Any type of boost will drain the boost bar fully and the player must wait till it's recharged. Forward boosting is pretty simple. Pressing E or left shift will boost the vehicle in its forward direction. Upward boosting will boost the car in the vehicle's upward direction by pressing space or Q. However, the player can only do this if the car is grounded. The car will only be grounded if 2 or more wheels are touching the ground. Sideways boosting is more of a dodging type of boost. Holding X and pressing either the left or right mouse button will allow you to boost in that direction, left or right. In-air control was a fun one to make. When the car isn't grounded, the player can pitch the car up or down and roll the car left or right. I may add yaw, I'm not sure. The in-air control is more for tricks or leveling the car with the surface you land on. If the player boosts upwards and angles their car just right, they can boost a second time, which can lead to some very interesting forms of travel. I also added a feature to roll the car if it gets stuck on its side. This basically is just in-air control but with an added multiplier when the car is stuck. The car will have it stuck to be true if the car is not facing upright. The player rating is a bar made up of stars next to each other. This is your score multiplier and will increase for every completed objective or will decrease when encountering an explosive. Speaking of explosives, let's get onto the weapons. There are a few types of weapons the player can pick up as they play. Explosive missiles and mines, or EMP missiles and mines. Explosives will reduce the rating of the player who is inside the blast radius, and EMPs will stop the player from controlling their car for a short time. EMPs will also turn off any street objects nearby. Missiles will explode on impact while mines will wait for a player to be near it to go off. Missiles and mines can activate other mines, giving them a secondary purpose. Mines are also rigid bodies, so you can drop them on players from large heights. You will know when a mine is active when a very obvious red orb growing and shrinking in size will appear around the mine. Weapons will spawn locally to each player, and only certain weapons will spawn depending on the team the player is on. There is a short cooldown after using a weapon before the player can pick up another or use another one if they somehow manage to pick one up. This is shown as a slider where the currently active weapon is shown, more on that later. There will be 6 planned game modes for this game. Currently I have 1. The other 5 will be worked on once I've finished any other base game stuff. I've decided to talk about each game mode once I've completed it. However, 1 is done, so I'll talk about that. Taxi Showdown is the base game mode for this game. The whole game is built around this. It's pretty simple. You pick up a customer and drop them off elsewhere to earn points and a higher rating. The higher the rating, the more points you earn. There's also time limits, the default being 5 minutes. Now this is all well and good if it's just you, but hopefully in most cases it isn't, and you'll be against other players. When other players are involved, you'll have to get creative as the weapons will be accessible to you and others. So placing mines in good spots and firing missiles at each other will be your best bet to lower your opponent's rating or stop for a short time. Don't get caught up in your own explosions. That is Taxi Showdown, a chaotic free-for-all game mode, racing around to get the best score. If you're wondering why there's a green arrow above the car, that's the objective arrow. It will point in the direction that you'll need to go and will change colour accordingly to the type of objective you have. However, in other game modes this won't be shown to increase difficulty in some aspects. This will make more sense as other game modes follow a more dynamic game mode style. Overall, this arrow is just to help the player as there's no large beacon of light or trail on the minimap telling you where to go. Either way, most objective points will use an unlit material as you'll be able to see them most times if it's somewhat visible to you. The game timer is made with 2 modes, counting up and being an infinite timer, and counting down, causing a rush to the end with the highest score. When there is a countdown, the timer will turn red when it reaches 30 seconds. The music will also change too. The timer UI is located in the bottom right. I decided to make a minimap, as having a top-down view that doesn't involve propelling yourself into the air would be useful. I also made it so that the minimap colour is the primary colour of your vehicle. All roads and roofs will be present in the minimap, all of which are sprites and will only show up for the minimap camera. This way I'm not using double the rendering power on two cameras with 3D objects. Players will appear on the minimap showing their primary vehicle colour as their pin colour. Each pin is parented to a player and will appear for other players. This way you can see where players are and lay possible traps for them to encounter, making sure they haven't seen you either. The pin itself is basically just a circle with an arrow and will obviously point in the direction where your car is facing. Objectives will appear as coloured circles on the map. They'll be the same colour as your objective colour to help guide you on what you need to do. Local player weapon spawns will appear on the minimap also. They contain a colour to determine if they are an explosive or EMP, as well as having a missile or mine symbol. I also have included red or blue translucent circles to show the explosions or EMP blasts on the minimap. The objective text is the bar at the top of the screen giving you instructions on what to do next. They'll also be coloured in the correct objective colour, and the text will change accordingly to what active objective is set. On-screen controls may end up moving elsewhere as they seem a little out of place, plus it seems to give too much info at once. I may have viewable controls in a separate section in the main menu, as well as showing them during the pan around camo before the game starts. However, they will also contain input sprites to instruct what key or keys to press, similar to the hotel. Your currently active weapon will appear in the bottom left, above the bars. If you have no weapon present, then it will show a no symbol. If you pick up a weapon, then the icon will change to either a missile or a mine with the explosive colour red or EMP colour blue. Once you have used a weapon, there will be a 3-second cooldown represented as a background slider going from the bottom to the top. You cannot pick up or use any weapon till this cooldown has been completed. The player bars have been somewhat explained before. These bars are the ones in the bottom left, however the top one is the player rating and the bottom one is the player boost bar. These change colour along a gradient depending on how high or low the slider is set to. Red to green for the rating and a brown to orange for the boost. Both bars have different styles, the rating being made up of stars and the boost being made up of a rounded rectangle with a cutout in the bottom right. Scoring is just nice and simple. It's a bit of text to the right of the weapon UI displaying the word score and then your score afterwards. It will always update with your current point, however, if there is a countdown going upwards, it won't appear. Transitions are also nice and simple. I decided to create 2 transitions to represent what is happening in the game. A simple fade for scene loads and going to lobby screens, and 2 closing boxes from the left and right during the game pan, game start and game end. I feel like having 2 different types helps signify how the player should feel. The music is semi-dynamic, as the music will change depending on the game state and the timer. For example, you have the main menu music being a slightly slower version of the main theme. When in a game, the pan camera and start cooldown has the main theme intro. During a game you'll hear the main theme, and finally at the end countdown it switches to the main theme outro. There's not many play sounds happening other than picking up and dropping off customers in Taxi Showdown. The plan is to include different engine sounds per vehicle, new objective sounds, boost sounds, crash sounds, etc. The weapon sounds are pretty simple. When they are active they play a slow beep. When a mine is charging it will play fast repetitive beeps increasing in pitch, and a missile will play a thrust sound as it flies across the map. That's pretty much everything I have to explain and talk about to do with the game so far. As I said, I'm far from done and just wanted to get most of the base game completed before I presented my work so far. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you'll enjoy further content from me. Simply leaving a like and subscribing from you to see more content is more than enough. Thank you for watching.